It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine?
Imagine a moment, just a single moment, when the entire world seems to pause. It was 1997 at the Emmy Awards, when a humble man in a cardigan sweater stepped onto the stage. He didn't ask for applause. Instead, he requested 10 seconds of silence to think about the people who had helped shape who they were. The room, filled with Hollywood's glittering stars, fell quiet. That was Fred Rogers, our beloved neighbor. But behind that gentle smile was a deeper story, a truth his wife, Joanne, shared with us. Today, I invite you to step into Fred's neighborhood, where kindness is the language and love is written in 3 numbers, 1, 4, 3. Welcome to this video, where we'll explore the life of Fred Rogers, not only through the lens of Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, but also through the eyes of Joanne, the woman who stood by his side for over 5 decades. This is a story for you, those who grew up with Fred, who found comfort in his soothing voice, and who still cherish kindness in a world that can sometimes be too loud. So, sit back, relax, and join me on this 30-minute journey. Like old friends chatting over a cup of tea, sharing memories and lessons from a man who changed how we see the world. Let's first travel back to the 1960s, when children's television was a whirlwind of noise and vibrant colors. Shows competed for attention with loud antics, boisterous cartoon characters, and rushed stories. But then, a program emerged, slow, intimate, like a whisper amidst the storm. Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood premiered on PBS in 1968, and it was unlike anything else. No flashy effects, no noisy characters, just Fred, walking through the door, hanging up his coat, putting on a sweater, slipping into sneakers, and singing, "Won't you be my neighbor?" Do you remember that feeling? As if he was speaking directly to you, as if you were the only person in the world who mattered. Fred had a way of looking into the camera, but really into the hearts of millions of children, making them feel seen and loved. He wasn't just a host, he was a friend, a teacher, and sometimes a spiritual father for those who needed a safe place to rest. I bet many of us, as kids, sat in front of the screen, feeling like Fred was talking just to us, as if he knew exactly what we were going through. Fred Rogers never aspired to be a television star. He wasn't drawn to fame or the spotlight. What he wanted, more than anything, was to meet children where they needed him most, in their big emotions, their small questions, and their growing hearts. While other shows taught the alphabet or numbers, Fred taught us how to face fear, anger, or joy. He tackled tough topics like divorce, death, racial differences, or disabilities, but never made children feel dismissed. He spoke to them with respect, as if they were little adults, worthy of being heard. Think about how Fred approached those topics. He didn't shy away. When talking about death, he explained it gently but honestly, helping kids understand that sadness is natural. When addressing differences, he invited people like Officer Clemens, a black man, to soak their feet together in a pool, a revolutionary act at a time when racial segregation was still raw. Fred didn't just teach kids to read or count. He taught them to love, to forgive, and to be a good neighbor. Do you remember the neighborhood of make-believe? It was a magical world where puppets like King Friday the 13th, Daniel Tiger, or Lady Elaine Fairchild told stories that mirrored real life. Fred voiced many of these characters himself, and each carried a piece of his personality, his curiosity, compassion, and even his quiet worries. Daniel Tiger, with his sensitive heart, was perhaps the most like Fred, always questioning the world and trying to understand his feelings. The stories in make-believe weren't just for entertainment. They were lessons cleverly wrapped, helping kids navigate conflict, empathy, and living with others. Over 31 seasons, from 1968 to 2001, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood aired 895 episodes. That's a feat, friends. For a show that didn't rely on glamour, but on heart, Fred knew kids didn't need more noise. They needed quiet. They needed sincerity. And above all, they needed an adult who didn't brush off their problems as childish. Each episode was a timeless gem. No canned laughter, no loud sound effects. Just Fred, talking directly to you, as if there was no distance between the screen and your heart. I want you to think about a moment from your childhood when maybe life wasn't easy. Perhaps you felt lost, teased, or just needed someone to listen. For many of us, Fred was that friend. One commenter, now 64, shared that as a child teased for their weight, they found solace in Fred's show. They wrote, "I will always love him, and I hope he's singing with the angels." Another shared that, as a lonely little girl, Fred made her feel she had at least one friend. Another commenter, now 71, said they cried when Fred passed away and still cherish everything he did for children, helping them feel worthy and loved. These stories aren't just memories, they're proof of Fred's impact. One commenter shared that they grew up in a large family, and Fred's show made them feel special, as if he was speaking just to them. Another, now 60, admitted they still watch Fred's show as an adult because it brings peace in a chaotic world. These moments remind us that Fred didn't just make television, he touched hearts, healed wounds, and gave hope to those who needed it most. Fred's show wasn't just for kids. Parents found peace in those 30 minutes too. One mother shared that when Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood was on, her kids would quiet down, and the house felt calm. Another said her eldest son once joked that Fred was her boyfriend because she loved the show so much. Another commenter said their son, Aaron, learned kindness from Fred, and they believe he profoundly shaped how their son grew up. These small moments show that Fred didn't just touch children's hearts. He brought families together, creating memories that span generations. But what made Fred's show special wasn't just its content. It was how he welcomed guests from all walks of life, artists, musicians, scientists, and even animals. Do you remember when Yo-Yo Ma played the cello and talked about how music expresses emotions? He didn't just play music, he shared how music can say what words cannot. Or when Julia Child brought her love of cooking to Fred's kitchen, with her radiant smile and enthusiasm that made every kid want to cook? LeVar Burton from Reading Rainbow, magician David Copperfield, singer Tony Bennett, and even Koko the gorilla, who communicated through sign language, all were treated with equal respect by Fred. The moment with Koko was especially unforgettable. When Koko spoke to Fred through sign language, it was a testament to how Fred connected with others, not just through words, but through the heart. He once said, "The greatest gift you can give is your honest self." And that's exactly what he did, with every guest, every viewer, and every moment on screen. One commenter, now 65, wrote that though they didn't watch much of Fred's show as a child, they believe he was a kind, spiritual man far beyond today's Hollywood stars or politicians. The success of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood was recognized with 4 Emmy Awards, 55 nominations, and a Lifetime Achievement Award for Fred in 1997. But for Fred, the real reward wasn't trophies. It was knowing children felt loved and understood. One commenter shared that they met Fred in person, and he was exactly as he appeared on TV, gentle, kind, and sincere. Another wrote, "I don't want to hear anything but good things about this wonderful man." These words show that Fred wasn't just an icon, He was a person who truly lived what he taught. But Fred didn't do this alone. To understand him, we must meet Joanne Rogers, the woman who walked beside him through every high and low. Joanne wasn't just Mrs. Fred Rogers. She was a talented pianist, an independent woman with her own story. Born in 1928 in Jacksonville, Florida, Joanne grew up in a family that cherished music, curiosity, and deep conversations. Her father was a salesman, often away on business, while her mother was a homemaker who kept their home filled with love and order. From a young age, Joanne was a piano prodigy, playing not to impress, but because music made her feel alive. Joanne didn't just play the piano, she lived in music. She loved classical, jazz, and folk, exploring every genre with endless curiosity. At Rollins College in Winter Park, Florida, she quickly stood out, not just for her technical skill, but for the soul she poured into every note. Her professors and peers felt it. She had a gift for connecting with others through music, making them feel heard and understood. But Joanne wasn't one for the spotlight. She valued deep relationships, honest conversations, and the sense of belonging to a community. Joanne studied at Rollins College, where she met Fred in the late 1940s. Both were music students, passionate about creativity and sharing a rare sincerity. But what caught Joanne's attention wasn't Fred's charm. It was how he listened, truly listened, and how he treated everyone with gentleness. She once said Fred had a way of making people feel they mattered, even in a fleeting moment. Their love didn't begin with grand romantic gestures. It was built in piano practice rooms, shared performances, and late-night conversations where they exchanged dreams, fears, and favorite melodies. After graduation, Fred moved to New York to work for NBC, while Joanne stayed in Florida. Can you imagine how hard a long-distance relationship was back then? No texts, no video calls, just handwritten letters sent across miles. But those letters never stopped. Each envelope carried not just words, but care, longing, and a growing trust. Joanne once shared that Fred's letters weren't just love notes, they were stories about his life, what he was learning, and his dreams for a better world. Then, one day, Fred sent a special letter, a proposal. Joanne recalled rushing to a phone booth to say yes, nearly losing the letter in her excitement. She kept that letter carefully, like a treasure, because it marked the start of something unshakable. They married in 1952, beginning a marriage that lasted over 50 years. But friends, their love wasn't a perfect fairy tale. It was alive, sometimes messy, but always real. They played piano together, often performing emotional duets, sometimes making mistakes and laughing about it. They had inside jokes, silly nicknames, and moments that belonged only to them. They had 2 sons, James and John, and Joanne became the emotional anchor of their family, protecting Fred's space when his work grew heavy. She wasn't just a mother or wife. She was a partner, challenging Fred when needed and understanding his silences. Joanne wasn't just a supportive wife. She was an artist with her own career. She taught music at Chatham College and Carlow College, inspiring students with her passion and warmth. She performed as part of a piano duo with her best friend Janine Morrison, recording 2 albums, Duo Piano Favorites, and a Virtuoso Duo Piano Showcase. In 2019, she received an honorary degree from Duquesne University, recognizing her dedication to music and education. Joanne didn't need the spotlight, but she shone in her own way, with humor, wisdom, and an open heart. Joanne understood Fred in a way no one else could. She knew he wasn't a saint. He was human, with worries, doubts, and a sensitive heart. He carried others' pain, fretting over whether he'd done enough. Joanne once shared that she was often the one disciplining their sons, while Fred was always gentle. that wasn't always balanced, and Fred's work, though noble, sometimes meant sacrifices for their family. But Joanne never tried to change Fred. She loved him for who he was, both his gentleness and his inner complexities. She once said Fred wasn't a saint, not in the way people often imagined. He was a man who worked hard to be his best self, and that made his kindness all the more precious. One commenter wrote that they appreciated Joanne for sharing the real Fred, not to diminish him, but to make his kindness even more meaningful. Fred had quirky habits, like swimming every morning or maintaining his weight at exactly 143 pounds. Do you know why? 143 was his code for I love you, 1 letter for I, 4 for love, and 3 for you. That's how Fred lived, with meaning in every small detail. He once shared that this number reminded him of love every day, and it became an inseparable part of him. But living as someone always gentle, always thoughtful, wasn't always easy. Millions of children looked up to him, and that responsibility sometimes weighed heavily on his shoulders. Joanne saw the days he was exhausted, the moments he doubted himself, and the challenges in their marriage. She once shared that there were times Fred grew quiet, not out of anger, but because he was grappling with his responsibilities. He worried he could do more, be better, for the children who depended on him. Joanne was the one who helped him through those moments, not by fixing things, but by being there, listening, and reminding him he'd already done so much. Now, let's talk about the heartbreaking truth Joanne revealed. When you hear that phrase, you might expect a shocking secret, a scandal that tarnishes Fred's legacy. But the truth Joanne shared is deeper, more human, and because of that, even more meaningful. In his final years, Fred faced stomach cancer. It was a journey not just physical, but emotional and spiritual. Joanne shared that Fred faced his illness with courage, but there were moments of loneliness and doubt, times when the man who always comforted others needed comfort himself. It began with mild pains, like indigestion, which Fred tried to ignore. He was always careful with his health, eating well, living disciplined. He once said he wanted to keep his body strong to continue his mission. But when the pain became unbearable, they sought a doctor. The news was harsh. The cancer had spread, and time was short. Joanne said the moment they received the diagnosis was one of the hardest in her life. But Fred, with his resilience, refused to let the disease define him. Long days of treatment, a weakening body, and the realization that time was slipping away left Fred, always so steady, vulnerable. He once told Joanne he wasn't afraid of death, but he worried about leaving those he loved. He wanted to ensure his message of kindness, of love, would live on. Joanne was there, holding his hand through those days, reminding him that his legacy was strong enough to endure. But even in those days, Fred tried to live true to himself. In January 2003, just weeks before his passing, Fred still participated in the Rose Parade in Pasadena as Grand Marshal. Can you imagine a man battling a terminal illness, yet still wanting to bring joy to others? Joanne said Fred smiled through the parade, though she knew he was in pain. It was a testament to his dedication, not just to his work, but to the world he cherished. At home, Fred found peace in playing the piano, even as his body weakened. Music, which had bound him and Joanne since their early days, became his final solace. Joanne said she'd sometimes sit beside him, listening to his slow melodies, feeling like they were back in their early days as music students with the world ahead of them. Fred passed away on February 27, 2003, at their home in Pittsburgh, surrounded by family, just a day after his grandson's birthday. Joanne recalled telling Fred, "We'll be okay. The boys will be okay. And I'll try to be okay." She felt he left in peace, even with a touch of joy. She said she sensed he was ready, that he'd lived a full life, and that he trusted what he'd left behind. In the years that followed, Joanne stayed quiet about many details, not to hide anything, but to honor Fred's privacy. But eventually, she chose to share, so we could see Fred not just as an icon, but as a human, with pain, yet still choosing to live with love and kindness. Joanne became Fred's caregiver in his final months, a role both loving and challenging. She described feeling both awe for the man she loved and heartbreak watching him weaken. She once shared that some days she felt exhausted, not from the caregiving, but from the pain of watching her life partner struggle. But even in those tough days, Fred kept his sense of humor. Joanne said he still found ways to make her laugh, telling silly stories and calling her by old nicknames. One commenter wrote, "Thank you, Joanne, for sharing. Fred's choice of kindness, his steadfastness, inspires us." Another shared that they watched an interview with Joanne where she spoke about Fred with such love and sincerity, making them appreciate him even more. These moments show that Joanne wasn't just Fred's storyteller. She helped us see the real him, with all his complexity and beauty. After Fred's passing, Joanne didn't retreat into the shadows. She became the keeper of his legacy, serving as honorary chair of Fred Rogers Productions. She ensured Fred's message of kindness, sincerity, and listening to children continued to spread. She appeared in interviews, in the 2019 film A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, and in documentaries like Won't You Be My Neighbor? Her small role in the film wasn't just a cameo, it was her way of sharing a piece of their love story with the world. Joanne also shone in her own right. As a pianist, she performed and recorded 2 albums with her best friend Janine Morrison. Her music, like Fred's words, was her way of connecting with the world. She taught music at Chatham College and Carlow College, inspiring students with her passion and warmth. She didn't just teach them to play the piano, she taught them to find themselves through music, to listen to their hearts. In 2019, she received an honorary degree from Duquesne University, recognizing her contributions to music and education. Joanne wasn't one to boast. She once said she didn't want to be known just as Fred's wife, but for what she did. She had a sharp wit, often surprising people with her clever remarks. One commenter called her a gem, and I agree. She was an extraordinary woman, with humor, wisdom, and resilience. She once shared that she and Fred weren't a perfect couple. They argued, they disagreed, but they always chose to stay, to love, and to respect each other. Joanne passed away on January 14th, 21, at 92, in their Pittsburgh home, surrounded by loved ones. But her and Fred's legacy lives on. Did you know Pennsylvania declared May 23rd as 143 Day in Fred's honor? It's the 153rd day of the year, and people are encouraged to do something kind, as Fred did. One commenter wrote, "If only we could all be a little more like Fred Rogers." And I think that's something we can all strive for. Dear friends, as I read the comments under this video, I see your hearts. One wrote that they cried when Fred passed, and at 71 they still love everything he did. Another shared that their son learned kindness from Fred, believing he deeply shaped how their son grew up. Another, now 60, said they still watch Fred's show as an adult because it brings peace in a chaotic world. A 65-year-old black man wrote that. Though he didn't watch much of Fred's show as a child, he believes Fred was a kind, spiritual man, far beyond today's Hollywood stars or politicians. I want to share one more story from the comments because it touched my heart. Someone shared that they were a rebellious teen, but a teacher in Maine, much like Fred, changed their life. That teacher and his wife listened, showed patience, and ultimately led them to faith. They wrote, "Without those two wonderful souls, I might have taken a very different path." This story reminds us that people like Fred, those who choose kindness, patience, and love, can change the world, one person at a time. Fred and Joanne gave us a gift, not just a TV show, but a way of living. They reminded us that kindness is a choice, that love can be spoken in 3 simple numbers: 1, 4, 3, and that, even in our most painful moments, we can choose to live authentically, with an open heart. They didn't live for applause or the spotlight. They lived for mornings filled with music, laughter in ordinary moments, and the enduring friendship of 2 souls. Think about the lessons Fred taught us. He said everyone is valuable just for being themselves. He taught us to listen, to apologize, and to love without being loud. He taught us that differences aren't something to fear, but what make the world beautiful. One commenter wrote, "The world needs Fred Rogers' kindness." And I think we all agree. In a world full of division and noise, Fred's message is like a lighthouse, guiding us back to what truly matters. Before we close, I invite you to do what Fred did at the 1997 Emmys. Take 10 seconds of silence, right now, to think about someone who helped you become who you are. Maybe it's Fred, maybe Joanne, or someone special in your life. Let gratitude fill your heart. Thank you for joining me on this long journey. If the story touched your heart, leave a comment, share your thoughts, and hit the like or subscribe button for more stories like this. Tell me, who made you feel loved the way Fred did? Or what moment from Mr. Rogers' neighborhood do you remember most? I'd love to hear your stories. I'm your storyteller, and I hope to see you in the next video. Keep being a good neighbor, as Fred and Joanne taught us. And remember, in the neighborhood of kindness, you're always welcome. See you soon, dear friends.